On the 15th of June, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced that the government was preparing to ban social media use for people under 16. The legislation is expected to be submitted to Parliament before Christmas this year, with the law likely to come into force in spring next year. Countries that have recently moved to restrict social media are not necessarily dictatorships that fear people gathering to resist. Australia paved the way at the end of last year and has now become a model for today's Britain. Australia has passed and implemented a law setting the minimum age for social media users at 16, with the law taking precedence over parental approval. Social media platforms bear the relevant responsibility. They must set up age verification mechanisms, requiring users to upload identity documents and use facial age verification software to confirm they are at least 16 before allowing them to create accounts. Messaging apps and educational platforms are excluded, and children may still use them. Restricted platforms include Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, X, Reddit, and Twitch. Canada has also followed suit. At the beginning of June, its government introduced a bill planning to ban people under 16 from holding accounts on social media, streaming platforms, and even AI chatbots. If the legislative proposals in Britain and Canada are passed, the English-speaking world will have formed an empire on which the sun never sets, one that bars children from using social media. In an era of rapidly advancing computer intelligence and even closer integration with human life, this would be a remarkable sight. Starmer's stated legislative aim can stand as a summary. He said the law is going to give kids their childhood back. Social media deprives children of their proper childhood in several ways, including luring them into addiction, causing mental health problems such as anxiety and depression, exposing them to traps involving cyberbullying and sexual abuse, and allowing businesses to harvest children's digital footprints for profit. By common sense, most people would agree that this is not the life children ought to have. So, under the banner of protecting children, cutting them off from these evils is certainly a persuasive argument. There are also many opponents of the legislation. Their arguments include effectiveness, meaning that the ban will be hard to enforce and will eventually push children into finding legal loopholes, which will not give childhood back, but will instead undermine the government's credibility. There is also the argument of political power. If a government is allowed to restrict citizens' rights, it will seek to expand this power step by step and further erode other rights. Another is the family education argument, which holds that guiding children to use the internet healthily is the responsibility of parents, not the government. In the face of support for the legislation, these objections are ineffective. Because the government's key assumption is this: people are not capable of judging the merits and dangers of the online world and don't know how to teach children to use social media properly, so government intervention is required. Not long after the internet became widespread, people began advocating digital literacy. UNESCO defines digital literacy as the ability to access, manage, understand, integrate, communicate, evaluate, and create information safely and appropriately through digital technologies for employment, decent jobs, and entrepreneurship. UNESCO says digital literacy can empower people, and in particular youth, to adopt a critical mindset when engaging with information and digital technologies, and to build a resilience in the face of disinformation, hate speech, and violent extremism. This is precisely the ability one should have when facing the digital world, and it also helps to avoid the anxieties of the Australian, British, and Canadian governments about the harms the internet may pose to children and adolescents. What is strange is that in the debates over legislation, whether the arguments are for or against it, they focus on the fearfulness of the online world, the role of parents, government power, and the effectiveness of lawmaking, while digital literacy is mentioned only rarely. Before using any tool, one must first understand how to use it. When buying a new appliance, you have to read the user manual. Of course, we understand that many people don't. They unpack it and use it straight away, and as a result fail to get the most of the appliance, break it, or even cause accidents. Stories like that are heard all the time. Learning to drive on public roads begins with the idea that driving can endanger lives at any moment. A driver must pass tests on traffic regulations and driving skills before they take a car onto the road. Yet the Australian, British and Canadian governments now treat going online like driving. They don't intend to teach people the correct way to use it, and they also look down on parents as unfit to discipline their children, so they appear to prefer a simple blanket ban. Unfortunately, this kind of legislation has a certain level of public support. Those in favor include parents and current affairs commentators, who say parents are powerless to stop the threats of social media and that only the highest authority can restrain it. This is essentially admitting public's intellectual inferiority, as though even adults can't help young people build digital literacy, or at least supervise the use of electronic devices, which is already a very low standard. This urgently calls for human reflection. When adults face the internet, are they acting as though they are confronted with a device from outer space, unable to read the manual, fiddling with it aimlessly and never managing to use it? Do adults actually possess what UNESCO calls the ability to access, manage, understand, integrate, communicate, evaluate, and create information safely and appropriately? I believe many people would firmly answer yes. If so, the reason for banning children from social media seems even stronger. This situation is indeed worthy of human concern and examination. But if some adults are currently at such a low standard, does that justify concluding that adults don't possess sufficient digital literacy, so when discussing children's use of social media, digital literacy is completely unnecessary for consideration? Even taking a step back and not rushing to support or oppose the law, the fact that digital literacy has vanished from recent discussions about social media legislation may show that a large number of people look down on the importance of building digital literacy. They treat the stupidity of internet users and the danger of the internet as unchangeable, and therefore will be even less inclined to cultivate the next generation's digital literacy. When those children grow up, they will become adults with similarly low literacy, which is something human beings should worry about for the long term. Western civilization has spent at least several centuries exploring human potential and rejecting the idea that life direction should be dictated by authority. Yet recent social developments show that a number of people are content with drift with the crowd and allow the members of a nation, a generation, or a civilization sink into mediocrity. Whether or not to use social media is still a small matter. The way human beings regard themselves is not something that a single law can carry. If you have any idea or like this video, please comment, like, subscribe and share. I'll be grateful if you support me on Patreon or Substack, making us go even further. See you on the next video.